We were standing there taking pictures of Buckingham Palace when we noticed him. A man who didn't quite fit into the picture, wearing a black leather jacket, even though it was very hot. He moved like a shark among fish, ruthlessly bypassing people, bypassing us. Every step he took was a threat. The atmosphere around him instantly changed. Tourists began to notice that something was wrong and retreated. A mother and her child clung to the wall, and even the pigeons that had always flown nearby suddenly disappeared. That man's name was Thomas Raker. I didn't know it at the time, but I felt that something was wrong. He was approaching the guardsman, the one in the red uniform. He was standing there like a statue, rifle in hand, and nothing seemed to be able to break him. I decided that this was just another theatrical moment for tourists. But Raker clearly had other plans. I couldn't even imagine what happened next. I stood among the tourists, trying not to pay attention to what was happening around me. It was Buckingham Palace, a familiar scene. People were taking pictures, laughing, children were running up and down the stairs, and I was just standing there, like every day. My task is to be still. But today was different. A man in a black leather jacket gave me a feeling that no one else had. He was making his way through the crowd, not paying attention to anyone. His movements were sharp, and every step he took seemed to measure the distance between him and my post. I noticed him long before he got any closer. It was an instinctive feeling, familiar from years of service. He had an expression on his face that was impossible to ignore, stern, cold, as if he had been through a fight where no rules applied. I did not react. I couldn't react. Protocol forbids any reaction unless there is a clear threat. But I felt that he was moving towards me. The man was in no hurry. His steps became more deliberate, almost cautious. His every movement spoke of readiness. I noticed his hand slipping slightly into his pocket. It was not just a usual pose for a tourist. It was a gesture of a man who was used to carrying a weapon. The crowd around us started to notice him, but not all of them. Some just smiled and took pictures of me, not knowing what was going on behind my face. Others began to press themselves against the walls and each other, not knowing why, but feeling that something was wrong. I saw a couple take their children away, and one man, obviously a veteran, start to approach me awkwardly, watching Raker intently. He understood something the others did not. Raker approached, his movements becoming more confident. I could feel the tension in the air rising. All these years of service hadn't taught me to forget that I had to be prepared for any situation, but now everything was different. Raker stopped. He was standing so close that I could hear his heavy breathing and smell his cigarettes. It was strange. I had been killing for years, learning to ignore any details around me, but this man made every cell in my body work. And suddenly he spoke. "I know who you are." His voice was low, breaking the silence, standing here like a marble statue. "You think you are indestructible, don't you?" My head was still. I couldn't answer or move from my seat, protocol. But I could feel all my muscles tense. Something in him made me not back down. He took a step forward. His hand reached into his pocket again, and I realized he wasn't just talking. It wasn't a threat. It was a signal to act. I did not wait. The decision had already been made. My eyes followed his movements, his every step, his every hand position. I already knew what he was planning to do. His hand came out of his pocket, not with a gun, but with a knife, a shiny, narrow knife, ready to strike. It was not what I expected. It was faster. There was no time for any reaction. I automatically raised my rifle, using it to block the knife's movement. And then the blow. I heard metal meeting metal. The whole crowd went numb, and those who didn't have time to jump away ran back, screaming. But I remained in place. I did not move. My rifle pushed the knife away, and I made another move, pushing it aside. Raker lost his balance for a moment, but immediately realized that it was just part of the game. His eyes were blazing. He was not backing down yet, and I realized that it was just about to start. The tourists started rushing around, forgetting about the photos and impressions of the palace. Some screamed, others stepped back, and some tried to understand what was happening. But I couldn't look at them. My eyes were focused on only one thing, him. Raker raised the knife, his face distorted with hatred. He did not run away. He was not afraid. I saw something cruel and ruthless in his eyes. It wasn't just a desire to pierce me, it was an attempt to break me, and not just physically. He didn't just stand there, he was already moving again, not giving me time to think. He grabbed the knife with both hands, holding it in front of him like a fighting weapon, and rushed forward, trying to break through my defense. His strokes were quick and careful, each movement calculated, each gesture saying that he was aiming for one thing, to break through my defense. I retreated half a step, not giving him an advantage. The rifle I was holding was now not just a symbol, but an instrument of struggle. I raised it to deflect the next blow, but at the moment of contact I felt his style change dramatically. Raker didn't seem to want to kill me. He wanted to kill me in spirit. He was trained, and these blows were not just out of anger. It was a precise psychological attack. How do you want to end this? His voice was calm, but there was a dull coldness in it that made my stomach feel oppressed. You probably think it's all a show, but you're not ready for a real fight. I pushed his knife away again with my rifle, although I know that physical contact was only part of it. He rushed forward again, sensing that I was unable to retreat. I knew it. His movements were deliberate. He was not panicking, and that scared me. I could see that he was already beginning to study my weaknesses, like a shield I held in front of me. With each of his movements, I could feel my reactions getting on my nerves. His attacks began to become more frequent, and with each blow he tried to find gaps in my defense. But I remained cool. Protocol says to stand your ground even when your life is at stake, but I was prepared for anything. You're not what I expected. He nodded at my rifle, looking at me with hostile contempt. I thought people like you were just figures for tourists. And now look at you. You don't know how to stop that knife? I didn't answer. All these words were attempts to break my discipline. He wanted to force me to act. I knew it. But I couldn't let him win. At that moment, I began to feel the air around us become heavy. People around us seemed to realize that something had happened. All the movement slowed down. I could feel my body, trained by years of discipline, beginning to recognize these moments. I didn't react to his words or his blows, although I know that was his goal, to make me act in a wrong way. His movements became more and more aggressive. He began to attack more. His hands held the knife with such confidence that I realized he felt that victory was almost in his hands. His eyes did not leave me, as if he was trying to penetrate the very essence of my existence. But I did not fall into his trap. I knew that he could only pierce me in a moment of weakness, and I had no right to be weak. And while he was advancing, I felt that tactically and psychologically I was already winning this battle. I was still on the edge. He was not getting tired. He was not fussing. His punches were precise, bold. He was not a street hooligan. He was a predator, deliberate and cold-blooded. And yet, something changed in him. His movements became less sharp. He began to get irritated. He expected a simple opponent. He didn't get one. He expected silence. He got a wall. Raker made another lunge, this time with a rightward tilt, trying to bypass my defense. His knife was aimed at my neck. The blow should have been fatal. But I wasn't thinking. I was already in the mode. The rifle went forward, not as a weapon, but as a lever. I didn't have to deflect the blow. I just changed the direction of the force. The blade went to the side. He lost his momentum. And in that moment, I made my first move that broke the rules. I took a step forward. It was a shock for everyone around me. The statue, which was supposed to stand still, suddenly came to life. In an instant, the ceremony disappeared, only the skill remained. Mechanically, exactly, I hit him under the elbow with the rifle butt. The knife fell out. There was no sound. It simply disappeared from his hand, as did his control over the situation. The people around us were numb. Most did not understand what was happening. But one movement, my step forward, destroyed the image of the toy soldier for them. Raker rushed forward with his fists. I was expecting it. I let the first attempt pass me by. The second, I stopped with my elbow. The third, in the stomach. I held my breath and moved my body back, dampening the blow. Then I did something he was definitely not expecting. I grabbed his arm and twisted my body around his shoulder. Everything happened almost silently. No screams. No heroic shouts. Just a sharp break in balance, and he was already on the ground. He did not give up. He tried to grab the knife. I didn't let him. My foot pushed his hand to the pavement. Not with excessive force, just enough to immobilize it. His fingers twitched. Sweat beaded on his forehead. But the knife remained where it had fallen. I stood over him. He was wheezing, but he did not ask for mercy. He just looked at me, and I saw. He no longer saw me as a guardsman. He saw a soldier. "You're not that doll," he whispered. We all served," I answered calmly. I did not raise my voice. It wasn't an act. It was the truth. They were interested in red uniforms, rifles, and marching. But behind each of us are years of service. Years of war. We are not standing here because we can move beautifully. We are standing because no one else can stand it. The first policeman appeared on the horizon. A veteran in civilian clothes was quickly explaining something to them. They were already running, but it was over. I calmly took my foot off his wrist. He did not move. I knew there was no point in doing anything else. The first cop knelt down, handcuffing him. I took 2 steps back and stood up again. The tourists were not filming. They were just watching. Some put their hands over their mouths. Others did not take their eyes off me. I didn't move. The knife was already in the evidence bag. The police led Raker across the yard. He walked without looking back. But before he disappeared behind the arch, he looked back and said, "This is not over yet." I did not answer. It didn't matter anymore. Because for me, like for everyone in that uniform, there was no end. There was only the next shift, the next duty, the next silence. And I was standing. And I kept standing. The police took him out through the gate, chained up, with nothing but emptiness on his face. He didn't speak anymore. He did not scream. His look was the same as many I've seen in my years of service in hot spots. It was the look of someone who had just faced something he was not prepared for. Silence fell around us again. The silence after the storm. The tourists were still standing. Some were silent. Others had their phones in their hands, but were no longer enthusiastic about taking pictures. Now they saw not just a beautiful form. Now they knew who was standing in it. I did not move. After everything, this is the most difficult thing. Not to lose control when your body is still tense, when adrenaline is still pumping in your temples. When you have just stopped an attack, when you still have the remnants of the battle in you, and you have to stand again. And to stand properly. Straight. Without emotion. From the corner of my eye, I could see a police officer quickly reporting something on the radio. Then I saw a few more people in uniform. One of them cautiously approached me, as if afraid to break the silence I was already in. "Is everything under control?" He nodded briefly. I did not answer. Silence was part of the protocol. He understood. He walked away. No one else came over. A few minutes later, I heard the voice of the senior officer on duty. They said that a special unit was already working at the scene. All the video recordings from the cameras at the entrance are being checked. The knife will be examined by experts. The attacker has already been identified. He has several previous convictions and has been in prison in recent years. Nothing is surprising. But I could see without the reports that he was not just sick or desperate. He was looking for a weakness, not in the walls of the palace, but in us, in the guards, in tradition, and he did not find it. I stood there until the sun changed its angle. The pavement on the ground shone in the places where the knife had just been. They had already started to wipe the traces. Some of the staff was silently washing the tiles with water. Everything was supposed to look like it always did, as if nothing had happened. But those who saw it will never forget. A group of school children stood nearby. Their teacher was explaining what had happened in a whisper, but with respect. One boy, about 10 years old, pulled out a notebook and began to draw something. I heard what he said. He is standing like a real soldier. And that was the only thing I needed to hear. Half an hour later, I was replaced. Everything happened clearly, according to the protocol. The body remembers its duties even when the mind is still processing what happened. I handed over my post, returned my rifle, walked past the archway, and found myself outside the palace walls. There, in the narrow corridor between the courtyards, an officer was already waiting. He did not ask much. Only briefly, "Is everything all right?" I nodded. He wrote something down in his notebook. "Your reaction was flawless. A clean job. All by the book. Your report on the table by 1900 hours. It's some rest." I moved on, leaving behind the uniform, the tension, the formality. In the locker room, I left my uniform, rifle, leather belt, everything folded to the nearest centimeter. But in the mirror, I saw someone other than the one who came on duty in the morning. The eyes were the same, but deeper, darker. We always knew what could happen. We learned to be ready. But something was different in this situation. It was not an ordinary attack. It was a challenge. And we answered it. Without words. Without theater. Just like always. The soldier stands. Even when the world is falling apart. Evening London was slowly quieting down. A fog, typical of this time of year, hung over the city, blurring the outlines of buildings, people, and cars into gray watercolors. I was sitting in the break room with a cup of black coffee that had long since gone cold. I couldn't taste it. My fingers were still trembling a little, although it was not visible from the outside. My whole body was in a standby mode, as if it hadn't yet received the signal that the threat was over. I wrote the report clearly. No unnecessary emotions, just facts. At 1437, a person wearing a black leather jacket, a man aged 35 to 40, attempted an armed attack on a guard. Then, the technique, movements, actions, blocking, detention. Everything is within the protocol. Everything was flawless. But inside me, there was something that did not fit into the paper formulations. I thought about the moment, the first one when I realized that the knife was no longer in my pocket. That was the line. It was in that second that everything went from standing to surviving. And, strangely enough, I didn't feel any fear. Only silence. Inside and outside. We have no right to be afraid. We have no right to doubt. Our presence is not just a red uniform and a posture. It is a symbol. It is a line that must not be broken, no matter what. You know, we have a saying that newcomers hear in the early days, your stillness is the peace of mind for others. Tourists don't see your sweat. They don't see how your jaw clenches when they shout in your face, how your back burns after 3 hours on your feet. They only see an image, and this image must remain unchanged, even when a knife is flying at you. Especially then. I received a call from the senior instructor after my shift. His voice was calm, familiar, without unnecessary intonations. The video has already gone to the press. There will be many inquiries, but keep your distance. You did what you had to do, and you did it right. I did not argue. I don't like unnecessary attention, but I knew that the story had already gone beyond an internal report. The story in which the guard did not just stand there, but immediately responded with a force that no one expected. Some will write, it was against the rules. Others, heroism. And me? I was just doing my job. Because sometimes the slightest movement can save dozens of lives. The next morning I was at my post again. The same yard. The same stairs. The same tourists. But something was different. Now, when people passed by, they didn't just take pictures with their phones. They were looking attentively, deeply. And they saw not just a uniform. The guy in the baseball cap whispered something to his friend. It's the same one. The one from yesterday. They did not approach. They stood there in silence. Respect not shouted, not theatrical. Simple. Sincere. And I stood there. Because this is the point. In constancy. In silence. In readiness. Today it was a knife. Tomorrow it may be something more. And I will not have the right to turn away again. We are not a decoration of the monarchy. We are its shield. And no matter how many people like Raker come, no matter how much they test us, we will stand. Without fear. Without words. Because we are not just guards. We are the last frontier.